It's now time for the Billy C. Show, part of the BillyCBoxing.com network.
And we're coming to you live from the Billy C. Studios in Lake George, New York. I'm Bill Calogero, and it's time for the Billy C. Show. Good morning, good day, good evening, whenever you're watching, whenever you're listening. I hope you're doing okay today. Today's show is being brought to us in part by, you guessed it, my book, Tom Molyneux, From Bondage to Baddest Man on the Planet, is available right now where all good books are sold. You can get a copy of it right now while you're watching or listening to this very show. It's a great stocking stuff. Just visit Amazon.com, or if you're looking to get a signed copy, just drop me an email, Billy@TalkinBoxing. That's TalkinBoxing.com. Today's show is also being brought to us in part by BillyCBoxing.com. Check it out. All the boxing news that's fit to print, and we have it there. Plus, we have some schedules. We have news on this show, what's going on, blah, blah, blah. Check it out, man. I think you'll like it. No pop-ups, no BS. BillyCBoxing.com. And also, today's show is being brought to us in part by Blackett Products. Check out the website, BillyCBoxing.com, and click on the banner that's to the right. You can get everything, T-shirts, mugs, anything you want, even sporting boxing equipment's available. And if you go there through that link, you'll get a 15 or 20% discount on your order. So check it out. I got some stuff from there last week. And, I was a little hesitant, to be honest, but the pricing was right in line with Amazon. Plus, I got my discount, so I was pretty happy. Check it out, Blackett. It's on the website. Just click the banner. You can't miss it. And it's a perfect timing with the holidays coming up. I want to give a shout out to my man, Jesus, who's in the chat room. He's numero uno. He's the first one in there. I know we started a little early. He's asking me, did I see forearm and or elbow near Robson? That may have I didn't watch that fight against with Robsy. I didn't see it. So I can't answer that question, my man. Shout out to my man Joel, who just popped in and all he does for the show. Listen, coming up a little bit later on the show, we're going to be talking about the Tyson Fury, Oleksandr Usyk rematch. So I'll be giving you my thoughts on that, plus some of the other great cards that are coming up. We'll also be talking about the 2025 International Boxing Hall of Fame inductees. That'll be coming up. And when I say we, I'm not trying to speak French. Alex Pierpaoli is going to be joining us in a little bit. And also, I want to look at some of the fights that are coming up early next year. And both Alex and I are going to give you our thoughts on next year. A programming note, I just want to let everybody know, this will be the last show that we do for 2024. And quite honestly, stay tuned. Check out the website, BillyCBoxing.com, for when and if we're going to be coming back. There's been some talk about maybe not continuing with the show and or changing it a little bit. We'll see what happens. But first, I just want to get you caught up on some fights that took place last weekend. In a heavyweight fight that, I couldn't determine if I thought it was as good as the announcers were making it sound. And shout out to my man, Eric Botcher, who is one of the announcers. He's a world-renowned matchmaker, and somehow he was calling, doing the analysis on that card. But listening to them, well, the good thing about listening to Eric is he's so knowledgeable about these fighters. I mean, he does his research as a matchmaker, so he was straightening out the other guy for sure. But Kubrat Pulev became the new WBA regular world heavyweight champion when he beat Manuel Char, the Diamond Boy. Pulev improves to 32 wins, 3 losses, with 14 of his wins coming by knockout. And Char drops to 34-5, 20 of his W's by KO. It was a unanimous decision, the way the judges scored it. 2 saw it at 117-111, and the third had it 116-112. Pulev, this was his third attempt at a world title, and at 43 years old, he got it. He got it now. So we'll see what the regular world champion does. Also, in a rematch for the WBO Junior Lightweight Championship, Emmanuel Neretti improved to 39 wins, 2 losses, and a draw with a successful defense against Oscar Valdez, who he stopped in round 6. Valdez drops to 32-3 with 24 knockouts. And an interesting fight in the cruiserweight division, which, they were going back and forth with who Usyk was going to fight. And finally, he fought Peralta, and the fight ended in a draw. So Ryan Usyk, his record, 20 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw, 19 coming by knockout. He's the WBC #1 ranked cruiserweight, and the WC ranked #2, Yamel Peralta. He dropped his he didn't drop. He got his first draw, 17 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw. The way the judges scored it, 1 saw it in favor of Usyk, 115-113, and the other 2 saw it at 114-114. So I give a shout out to the unofficial official who popped into the chat room, and my main man, Travis, the What's Next Kid Smith. He's guys popping into the chat room. Speaking about popping in, joining us right now, the man, the myth, the legend himself, a Hall of Fame candidate, self-proclaimed, is Alex Pierpaoli. What's up, brother?
Good afternoon, Billy C. How are you?
Oh my God, I can hear you. I can
hear
you.
Isn't that great?
Hey, glad you could join us for our last show of the year. I wanted to kick out some fights that are going to be taking place that we could talk about right now before we really dive into the rematch between Tyson Fury and Oleksandr. How do you pronounce his name? His first name? It looks like Oleksandr, but it's just
Oleksandr. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because I've heard people just call him Alexander.
No, I think it's more Oleg, but I mean, we're sort of Americanizing it because he's Ukrainian. I mean, I don't speak Ukrainian, so I don't know,
Well, I could Billy C. eyes it and just totally murder it.
Yes, you could. You could.
I could totally murder it. I mean, putting that, with that said, I mean, look, anybody, we've been doing this show 21 years. Anybody that's ever watched it knows that I struggle a little with names. I'm the murderer of the name, even my own. Some people get so upset with that. And I don't mean to be offensive. I mean, I've been living with it my whole life. I'm sure you have too, with the mispronunciation of my own name, not by myself, but by other people. It really never bothered me that much. Did it bother you?
Not really. I mean, when somebody's doing it intentionally, yeah.
Right.
But I think for the most part, I'm pretty forgiving about that. But I do make note of it if somebody nails it, like somebody. In fact, I think it was like the day before Thanksgiving, I picked up groceries at Stop and Shop, and the guy came out.
Hey, what are you getting money for promoting the Stop and Shop? Come on.
Sorry.
YouTube's
and he came out
give me a problem.
At a neighborhood grocery store, and he said Pierpaoli, and I was like, wow, you nailed it.
I do the same thing. When people say my name correctly, I'm like, yeah. And actually, the American version of my last name is Calogero, but in Italy, it's pronounced Colagero.
Yeah.
So I give credit for either or. But
and I think that's probably the same thing with Oleksandr Usyk, is that it's probably, we say Usyk, maybe it's something different. Because I work at a reading program. I won't mention the company. Well,
I was only kidding about that.
I'm only kidding. It's a nonprofit anyway, so it's not a company. But that's one of the things. We have a lot of kids that are bilingual, and that is something that, these kids run into when you're trying to learn English and you're trying to learn how to read. It's all about learning our vowel sounds and stuff. And if you're a Spanish speaker at home, then you have a different vowel sounds. Some of our kids are maybe Arabic speakers at home or Russian speakers at home. And so their vowels are completely different. So that's really challenging. And it's impressive when you see that, because sometimes these little kids might be struggling with reading, but they're translating for the parents. And that's impressive, because I know one language, barely.
Me too. I also would think it's difficult because the order in which we speak in English is totally different than most languages,
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
in any way, like the red ball, we describe the ball first, but I know Spanish would say the ball and then the color, but
yeah,
anyway,
you would be like hombre guapísimo, and in English you'd just be handsome man.
Well, I just stick with Billy C. But anyway, coming up this weekend, Jaime Munguia. The balloons are going to be falling. I said it.
You nailed it.
I don't want anybody.
Remember Pee Wee Herman, where it was like the word of the day, where nobody knew it,
Yeah.
and as soon as somebody would say,
but that was one of them. People got so upset with me, whatever. But Mugaya, I used to say, but that's the way it looked. But it's Jaime Munguia. But in any event, he's ranked number 2 by the WBC, number 4 by the WBA, number 5 by the ABF, and number 3 by the WBO. He's stepping in the ring this weekend against Bruno Sarasi, who's not rated at all. Alex, this is one of my problems with the sport. When you have a fighter, and I don't have any issues with, fighters that are climbing the ranks and they're fighting other likewise fighters climbing the ranks. But once you get to be a highly ranked contender, and this is, this could be an argument because of the clause of all the sanctioning bodies. You could be ranked like in this case, he's ranked number 2 in the highest one in WBC and as low as number 5 on the IBF. But don't you think that even though it's a fight coming off his loss, don't you think he should be fighting a guy that's at least in the conversation in that division?
Yeah, I think, it's so obvious that this is sort of a placeholder, sort of to help him get back on his feet. It's not even a name, but I think you're right that it should be, it should be more like a top 15 guy at least. And that's not the case here. He's got a decent record, but it not when you look at it, like who's on it, And I think that's the thing, that if there's anything that I hope people, more than casual fans, I hope when you don't look at the numbers on the record, it's not like other sports where you could look at like a football team's record or you could look at a basketball team's record, because everybody has a similar schedule. Boxing, you really need to look at the names, to look behind the numbers.
I agree 100%. And that's one of my problems with some of the, what I term unknowledgeable fan, because they're looking at the record and, and they don't even care. The other thing that bothers
me, and I think a lot of promoters count on that.
Well, I know, but the other thing that bothers me is when their guy, whatever, or girl, fights and, they're in a mismatch in their favor, they're pounding their chest like they would just, they just beat a top fighter. But, one thing I will say, and I give a lot of credit, and I've said this before, but the amount of boxing that's available to watch if you subscribe to DAZN and ESPN Plus has been great. I mean, I happen to love DAZN because they will show you such a vast difference in level of fights. You get your top-notch, pay-per-view level, and then you get some of these club shows, which I love, especially when they're on in the afternoon. But
Yeah.
Another one that's taken place over the weekend is Dillian White is back in the ring against Ebenezer Scrooge. I mean, Ebenezer Tedder, who was an up and coming fighter. I was actually surprised to see that he isn't ranked by anyone, but I've heard some good things. This ought to be an interesting fight. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think. I mean, he's sort of an unknown quantity. But he is an up and coming guy. So, especially in the heavyweight division, that could be dangerous. And Dillian White, is coming back from a layoff and some difficulties, not only the loss, but I'm sorry, I'm fighting a cold and I got a scratchy throat. So I might be doing I'll keep hitting the mute before I cough. But
hey, whoa, what happened to the
mute? But I do think that because everybody's dangerous in the heavyweight division because all it takes is one shot. Yeah. But I think we're in a situation now where I think there's a few heavyweights that are trying to sort of keep their careers and keep hope alive, to steal the phrase from Jesse Jackson. That there might be a big money fight in the works at some point. Dillian White could maybe fight Anthony Joshua again. Anthony Joshua seems pretty much done, but it's like all three of these guys, Tyson Fury is going to be done after he fights Usyk. But I think.
Well, we're going to talk about that next.
We'll get to it. That's a little creepy.
No, because you coughed your way into a really high topic of mine. All right, and here's the thing. And this is the problem. People ask me all the time, can boxing ever get back to the way it was and all of this stuff? And my immediate answer is no. But the heavyweight division right now isn't horrible if you look at all of the individuals. But you just stumbled on the problem. You got a guy that's decent, okay? And he's worked his way up, and he's in a position to, get that shot. And there's a lot of shots because of all the sanctioning bodies. So he chooses the least difficult opponent to keep that O intact or keep that one loss intact, waiting his turn for the shot. This is where I feel that these fighters need to fight each other. And I think if they did, and they still had support from the fan base, even if they stumble, Alex, even if they stumble against another similarly ranked fighter, that their career is not over. Don't you think that if the powers that be just, grew some, and I don't mean gruesome like Halloween, I mean gruesome, and had the balls to challenge their fighter and give him an opportunity to get better by fighting better opponents.
Yeah, I think that's always the case. That that's the way you get better in the sport, is by challenging yourself. But it is a you got to be careful about that, because especially in the heavyweight division, you could suffer a loss that is a massive setback. However, if you can look good in a loss.
Who's the guy that just what was his name? The heavyweight Frankie Sanchez.
Yeah, that's one of the heavyweights. Yeah.
Now he just lost. He shouldn't have. Let me make sure. He just lost. He fought. He challenged himself, and there's a guy that should not be abandoned yet. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, because I do think. Oh, Frank Sanchez, the Cuban.
Him.
The Cuban Flash. Yep. That's
who.
Oh yeah, he fought that guy Ajit Kabayel. That was a Kabayel, I think, is an interesting guy. He's guy that's coming up.
Is that who he fought? I thought he fought.
Yeah.
I thought he fought Jagba.
He might have at some point, but Kabayel is the guy who beat him.
The last fight? Okay. All right.
Yeah. And Kabayel is fighting Zhilei Zhang in in February.
Right. We're gonna talk about that too.
How to pronounce that name? But I do think that I mean, to give you an example, I think just this weekend, I mean, the heavyweight division, you can make good fights out of guys that are sort of damaged goods in the way that promoters might look at them, you know, in sense of having multiple losses on the record. The Kubrat Pulev Manuel Char fight, that was a pretty good fight this weekend.
I watched the fight and I'm saying, I'm listening to Eric and
those two guys are just standing there bashing each other.
But it must have been because it was so far away, but it just, they just seem so slow,
Oh yeah. I think that it was a good matchup.
Oh, it was very evenly matched, 100%. Yeah.
But I think that's what made for an entertaining fight. But where those guys go from there, I don't know. Well, it certainly made for an entertaining fight, and I'm sure people that watched and the people that went to the event got their money's worth.
No doubt. Pulev could have been selling popcorn and they still would have been cheering him. But the December 24th, you got the Monster Inoue going up against Sam Goodwin. I know the Monster's been destroying people and stuff, but it's the junior featherweight title now, which he has. So he's moved up a couple of divisions. And Sammy Goodman is ranked by all four of the sanctioning bodies as high as number 1 by the WBO and IBF and number 6 by the WBC, WBA. So I don't have any problem with Inoue fighting him at all. I like the fight. But the fight I can't wait for is the one we just mentioned real quick. It's the rematch between Oleksandr Usyk, who's now the undisputed heavyweight titleist, going up against Tyson Fury. Alex, you already kind of gave away your thoughts, but tell me why you think not only Usyk's going to win this fight, how's he going to win, and why will it be the end of Tyson Fury, as you suggest moments ago?
I think it does. I think he wins, and I think this time he could stop him. Because I think the thing that maybe was lacking last time was that sort of this was undiscovered country for him, for Usyk, because it's like he has never fought somebody this gigantic. I think now he knows the dimensions of what the fight will bring him, and I think he's just got more skill than Tyson Fury. I think Tyson Fury, when you go up against a guy like that, when it was Fury and Deontay Wilder, Fury had the skill. But in this case, it's Usyk that has the skill. And what does Fury have? He has these physical advantages that didn't amount to enough. I think if he comes in better shape, maybe he looks better for a few rounds. But no, I think Usyk is the kind of guy that when you fight him in a rematch, I think he wins easier. And I think in a lot of most of the time, I don't know what the percentage probably is, but more than half of rematches, that's what happens. The guy who won the first time, or woman who won the first time, wins easier. And I think that's what's going to happen this time. It's very rare that someone's able to turn things around in a rematch. It happens, of course, but for the most part, usually the person who won the first fight wins easier, and I think that's what's going to happen.
Well, here's how I see it. Now, when we take a look, now remember, I picked Usyk. I think we both picked Usyk in the first fight. I know I did. I picked Usyk to win when they fought the first time. And going back and watching that fight, I think most people will agree it was a very close fight. And as a matter of fact, I believe Tyson Fury was on his way to victory, and he kind of started goofing around, and Usyk caught up with him, got him in some serious trouble, and ultimately won the fight. But it was still a pretty close fight. I mean, he had those two good, Usyk had two really good rounds in which Fury was in all kinds of trouble. Now, what's going to happen in the second fight, in my opinion, is that Fury's not going to fool around at all. He was in pretty good shape for that first fight, but for every single shot of him that I've seen, he's in phenomenal shape right now. I've never seen him in the shape. Now, he claims he's going to be weighing the same amount. His goal is to be the same and everything else. I think that Usyk, as talented and as smart as he is, he's been in some wars with guys that are way bigger than him. You know, his two fights with Anthony Joshua, his fight with Fury. You got to give the Daniel Dubois fight. I mean, Daniel Dubois is my new guy because I love that kid. I just wish somebody would teach him, defense just a little bit. But
I think he's probably the future of the sport.
I agree. He's 26 years old, and he is the future of the sport. I just hope that they have the wherewithal to get him some defense so he doesn't, otherwise he's
or I should say the future of the division.
Yeah, I agree. I agreed with you then, and I meant, I was thinking.
Yeah.
But the rematch between Usyk and Fury, I see it going a different way, Alex. I see Fury winning, and the reason why I see Fury winning is I think Usyk has a lot of mileage on him with the big guys. I think he's taken a lot of shots. Yes, he's smart. I don't know how differently. See, I don't think either one of them are going to fight each other differently. There's no different way to fight. They're going to fight the same way. So what you said is true. They're both going to be ready. It's going to be like round 13, but I think in this case, Fury does possess, boxing skill. He can be pretty elusive for a big man when you're fighting close. I think he's going to catch up with Usyk. And I think, Usyk has already talked about going back down to the division, which I think Usyk should drive right off into the sunset after this fight, win, lose, or draw. But I'm going the other way. I think Tyson Fury is going to win the rematch. And I think, just like you think Usyk is going to stop Fury, I think it's the other way around. I think that Fury will stop Usyk. He will connect with him. I know Usyk is going to be very cautious. The ring generalship, obviously, I think belongs to Usyk, and it's not because I don't think Tyson Fury has the skill set or the ring generalmanship. But the truth of the matter is that size of him, 7'4". You just can't be as agile as Usyk can. So, it's going to boil down to, can Tyson Fury corner this guy? Can he cut the ring off? Because, Usyk's going to be staying away and trying to outbox him. I don't know. I'm looking forward to the fight big time in a couple of weeks, but I'm leaning towards Tyson Fury in the rematch. So it ought to be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I personally, I didn't think it was really necessary because I thought that the first one wasn't close. But it's considering the amount of money that's on the table. I'm not surprised there's a rematch, but like I said, I do think that Usyk beats him. I think Usyk is one of the best heavyweights we've seen in terms of skills. One of the best heavyweights that we've seen in a long time. Because I think you'd probably have to go back to probably Lennox Lewis, because there's not somebody who jumps out at me in terms of the skill. Because remember, Usyk was incredibly talented even before he even got to the heavyweight division in terms of dispatching every single challenge available. So I think that in that sense, you got a guy, and not only that, as an amateur, he was terrific. So I do think that I don't know. I think it's going to be tough for Tyson Fury to reverse what happened in the first fight. But I do think the fight that I think would be interesting is that if Usyk does stick around, a rematch with Daniel Dubois, because I think that is a fight that would have a lot of market value. Because one, like we just both agree, Dubois is the future of the division, and I think that there's a lot of people out there that think Dubois was robbed of knocking him out. I don't agree. I think it was a low blow. It was ruled a low blow. I think that if it was not ruled a low blow, Usyk would have gotten up, because that's the kind of fighter he he is that if the judge ruled it a legit blow, he wouldn't have spent the time on the floor. I think he would have forced himself to get up.
I think it was shocking that Usyk got Fury in the trouble that he did when he didn't knock out Anthony Joshua, and considering Anthony Joshua, has a suspect chin, but I'm with you with Daniel Dubois, and I love his aggressiveness, especially the version of Triple D that we saw with Anthony Joshua.
That was one of my favorite fights the last few years.
If he stays like that, he's going to be a real tough out.
Well,
but the reasons are that these other heavyweights aren't challenging themselves. They're waiting for their shot for that payday, and they're not going to get better. Daniel Dubois was thrown in there earlier, and he has gotten better. He has fought some upper level fighters, and I think that it's paid off, the dividends we see.
Well, and plus, I think that Daniel Dubois that we saw just demolish Anthony Joshua, that's what you want in a heavyweight champion. You don't want this ponderous giant who just, paws at a guy, and then when everything looks safe, then stop him. You want a guy that takes risks and chars out there and fights like a nightmare creature. And I think that's what he was. That's what, puts asses in seats, quite frankly.
That's not Usyk, though.
Right. It's not Usyk. And I think that's why they kind of match up well.
Right.
Because I think because usually, and this is true in everything, in art as well, what makes for good storytelling? Mighty opposites. And because it creates conflict, and conflict is fun.
But what do you think? What do you think if Usyk comes out like a DDD, like a Triple D, and just starts attacking Fury? Can he stop him early?
I think he's too smart for that, because I think with a guy as big as Fury, you don't want to make a mistake.
But he never really possessed the power that you would think a guy his size. At least I never thought so.
Right, but he's still so huge that if you're that big and you know how to throw a punch, you could still do some damage, because this was sort of the case. I remember people talking about this when, because remember when Roy Jones moved up to heavyweight, people were always wondering, what's going to happen when Roy gets hit. That was before Tarver knocked him out. And it was also, there was the question of, will Roy's power mean anything to these heavyweights? If you're over 175-pound man, you can hit hard. If you know how to throw a punch and you're over 175 pounds, you have the ability to, with some exceptions, you can really hurt a person with one shot.
But actually, Alex, they've had studies about that, and that's why the 175-pound man, can knock out a 300-pound guy. So I mean that's but
because I mean the brain and the skull and the jaw and how, because what causes a knockout is rapid rotation of the head. You're literally interrupting the flow of the electrical impulses going up and down.
Fluid, it's called.
Up and down.
No, really, it is. It's the
spinal
fluid.
column,
That's fluid. It's called.
When you see that head go real, because it's kind of like that a car accident type thing. When your head goes real fast, it interrupts for a second, down you go.
That fluid,
that has very little to do with size.
That fluid that's in the spine that conducts that, electricity, so to speak, is called meningine fluid. It's that's what it's called. But
right, because that's when you get meningitis.
Right, it affects the spine.
Meningitis.
Yeah.
But
anyway, before we talk about the Hall of Fame, I want to talk about by far one of the best cards that I've seen on paper in a long time, and it's coming up early 2025, February 22nd. The Bivol and Beterbiev rematch. That fight in itself is a great fight. My opinion on the first one, I had the same score, 115, 113. I scored for Beterbiev. I thought the fight, we've talked about this, the fight was close. I wouldn't have been upset if Bivol got the fight. I wouldn't have been upset if it was ruled a draw. When they started talking about it being a robbery, that was the last thing it was. It wasn't a robbery. It was an extremely close fight. Now, going into the rematch, I'm not sure who to pick, but I think Bivol, Bivol, I think if you watch the post-fight interviews, you see these two guys, they share similar, like, blue-collar approach. Bivol was not, he doesn't show any kind of, any kind of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Motion.
And emotion. He's emotionless, win or lose, no smile, nothing, right? And so is Beterbiev. The thing is that the age is against a tour. I'm not so sure either one of them are going to change. There's another fight that's going to pick up at round 13, so to speak. I'm on the fence with the rematch. I mean, I'm thinking maybe Bivol this time, but I don't know. I like Beterbiev. I think his power. I think Bivol was showing us that he was nervous in that second half of that fight. And he's not going to beat this guy by doing a 1-2 and run and moving out of the way. And if Beterbiev can cut the ring off a little better, I think he's going to put a beating on Bivol. What's your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think the first fight, it showed how closely how great of a matchup it is. I was surprised how well Beterbiev boxed. I thought that Bivol was further ahead of him in terms of skill. But like you mentioned, the footwork Beterbiev showed in that first fight, and it wasn't anything fancy, but it was able to close the distance, to cut him off with just subtle moves, that kind of thing. I didn't think he was going to be able to do that. I thought that Bivol would have been harder to, sort of chase down and catch as often as he did.
But that's credit. You got to give credit to Beterbiev. I mean, his ring savvy of cutting the ring up against a guy as slick as Bivol.
Absolutely. That's what I mean. Yeah.
And I think that
I didn't think he had that in him.
And the other thing, John Scully said it on this show, and ever since he said it, it's been burned into my brain. And he's obviously, he trains the guy, he knows, but Beterbiev is he's got a really good jab, and I don't think people realize that. I think people just think he was a headhunter. He's not. I think don't be surprised if it's the same exact fight again.
Yeah. Well, and I think in a way that fight was a bit of a as much as it was a great matchup, I think the anticipation was a little too high for it to be a war. It was far more tactical. It was far more of a violent chess match.
Yeah, and again, I give the credit to Beterbiev because he was the guy everybody thought would go in for the head kill,
right.
But Bivol is not known for that. I mean, what did he go 6 years without a knockout?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that, and I think that's one of the things is that it'll be interesting to see if somebody can stop the other one in this rematch. I think the rematch is going to be a bit of a meaner fight, because I think both guys are extremely competitive. And I think they want to know who's better. And I think especially Bivol is going to be like, look, I want this fight. And Beterbiev will be like, I want to erase any doubt. So I do think that I expect it to be a better fight than the first one, more exciting. But you're right. It is a tough fight to call. I'm going to lean toward Beterbiev again because one of the things that I think is the big difference is that he just hits harder. And I think that really matters. Both these guys, you know, there's a lot of contact. And I think when Beterbiev is landing, even if he's landing on your arms, that's got to hurt, you know, and it's got to take a lot out of you. And I think that's one of the reasons why definitely down the stretch, it was Beterbiev coming on in those later rounds, because
and he doesn't seem to get hurt ever either.
Yeah, they both have really good chins.
But Bivol was hurt in that fight.
Yeah, I think Bivol is the one who showed a little more, you know, that he was human.
And then and then that's when the fight turned. When those last 3-4 rounds, Bivol was getting rocked, and he was staying away because of it. You know,
yeah.
It caught up with him. It'll be interesting to see. But the rest of that card is, I mean, I don't know if you've seen it, but the co-main event, Daniel Dubois against Joseph Parker for the title. I mean, that's a good fight. You can never underestimate that Joseph Parker, man. I mean, you know, but I love that fight. What's your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, that's going to be a good fight. I mean, I think Daniel Dubois wins it, but I think it should be fun. You know, Joseph Parker is definitely talented, but I think Daniel Dubois, if he connects, that, you know, it's good night, Irene.
But Parker's been in with a lot of different fighters. He's got some ring experience, you know. I mean, he should be ready for anything Dubois throws him, you know.
Yeah.
Plus, he's been hit by didn't Zong drop him really serious, and then he got up from that fight.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's, like we mentioned earlier, the Ajit Kabayel Zili Zong fight on the undercard. That's going to be a good one. I think the Joshua Buatsi Callum Smith fight is a good fight.
I know they're all good, and I wanted to go down the list here, but
that's a good.
The same thing. The Shakur Stevenson Floyd Schofield fight. Okay, so this fight, I'm not sold on Stevenson. I know everybody has anointed him the next great fight. I'm not sold on him. I'm sorry, I'm not. He hasn't really fought anybody. He's boring as hell. I mean, it's very hard to watch him fight. But I give him all the credit in the world for fighting Schofield, and the reason is Schofield happens to be the highest ranked fighter in the division that Tank Davis has the world title to, not Shakur Stevenson's WBC division, but Schofield is the top ranked fighter in the WBA, and Tank Davis is picking a smaller guy to fight. So in this respect, I give Stevenson credit for fighting a highly ranked fighter in his own weight class. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. Well, and it's hard not to you know, feel good about a fighter his last name is the same as a classic Western rifle. Remember in Unforgiven, that was the Schofield was the rifle that Morgan Freeman used, and then Clint ends up using too. That's such a great movie. Remember, because I think it loads through the hilt, so it's sort of like a unique weapon. But yeah, I think that I think Shakur Stevenson is incredibly talented. You're right. I think the biggest knock on him is that he's not all that thrilling to watch.
Boring.
It's sort of like the Guillermo Rigondeaux, where if you go back further,
I compared him. I was in a discussion with somebody, and I compared him. Somebody, I don't know if I compared him or whatever, but I commented, he's like Vladimir Klitschko was. Vladimir Klitschko is extremely boring, but Here's the difference.
Gets the job done.
No, Klitschko, you can make the argument, and Dax Khan said it years ago. You can make the argument that he never lost a round when he was fighting. He was boring, but he was winning rounds. Shakur, sometimes you say to yourself, who won that round? You know what I mean? He doesn't dominate. He does not dominate. You know?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that, this is a hurt business. So it's whenever a guy just like outclasses someone, it can be a little less than satisfying, But I tell you, the thing that's impressive about Shakur Stevenson, and I think it's noteworthy, is how the high regard other fighters hold him in. So that to me shows they see greatness in him, in how he goes about the business of the sweet science.
Well, wait a minute. Let's hold that thought for when we start talking about Hall of Fame, because I believe that the excitement value has to be in the mix. Okay? You can't just be, I mean, that's my big knock on Mayweather. He was never exciting. I can't remember. It's hard.
Yeah, but you don't doubt that he was. You don't doubt how good he was. I mean,
I do. I always have. I don't think we ever got to see the best Floyd because he's never challenged himself.
Well, maybe at welterweight, but to
lightweights, no. Before he became on his own, when he was with Top Rank, he was exciting.
I think at 130 pounds, I think he's like top 3 of all time. 130 pounds.
I don't know. I mean, yeah,
I think if you see that, you want to see Mayweather merciless, devastating. Watch his win over Jesus Chavez.
Yeah, but listen, at 130, people have said they think that people say that they thought Mayweather was one of the best at 135. And you know what I would say? I'd say Roberto Duran would have destroyed him at 135. So
I wouldn't say he's top
and we
5.
we could keep going back. We could go back to when fighters were real. But anyway, another fight on that card, that same card, Carlos Adames against Hamaz Shiraz for the WBC middleweight title. That's an interesting fight because Shiraz, I think, might be a tad overrated. He definitely has been exciting and he's climbed the ladder. Adames isn't super great either. I think it's a well-matched fight. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, it'll be interesting because I think that Hamza Shiraz, we have not seen him in somebody as talented. I mean, he has the knockout of Austin Williams, but I do think that Adames will be a bit of a step up for him. So I think that in that sense, but I think it's a step up that makes sense and that he's definitely ready for. Yeah, I think that's a good fight. I mean, I do think that Adames, to me, Sergey Derevyanchenko was just a really underrated fighter of the last.
Well, he fought a lot of tough guys.
Oh, absolutely. But Adames
gentle.
has the majority decision victory over him back in 2021. So it was before Derevyanchenko really took some. He was coming off the losses to Charlo and Golovkin, but now at this point, I think a victory over Derevyanchenko doesn't, quite hold the regard as it did in 2021. So I do think Adames, I would lean towards Hamza in that.
Well, I would like to see him because I love to see the young, changing of the guard. So then you got Virgil Ortiz against Israel Maradrimov. That's an interesting fight. That is not going to be a walk in the park for Ortiz.
No, definitely not. And I think that, this guy, the Madrimov is, one of those guys who I think he gave Terrence Crawford difficulties. There's just no question about that. People make it seem like, well, it was, the weight. I don't think it was the weight. I think he posed a difficult opponent for one of the best fighters in the sport right now. So I think that's one of the reasons why, he's a guy who he's only got 12 fights, but he's going to give Virgil Ortiz, definitely a difficult night at the office. That's for sure. That's a good fight.
Yeah. And then, like you were saying before, Butasi against Callum Smith for an interim belt. Yeah, there's 3 interim belts on it. And when they start doing interim belts, for fights, then damn well that those divisions are going to be broken up, because an interim belt is just saying, you're going to be the mandatory. Who cares if it's unified, But Callum Smith against Butasi, I think it's an even fight. This version of Callum Smith, I think, is an even fight. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things about this card that makes Top Rank a better. It's better for the fans than the PBC was, because I think you could go down this list, and I would not be surprised if there's wins from the A side and the B side. How many upsets are we going to see? Whereas when you watch a PBC card, it's like all the favorites are going to win. I don't know about that on this card. I mean, I think there's a lot of these are tough matchups.
Every one of them is.
Yeah. So I think that's what is going to make it fun. And I think a lot of people still have problems with the the whole Saudi Arabia stuff. As being the United States, I mean, our fingerprints are all over the world in terms of human rights violations and starting wars and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, we don't, it's not like the bone saw, using a bone saw on a journalist, there's not like an incident like that you could point to. But I do think that, it doesn't mean that Turk Alex. I can't.
Let me help you with the pronunciation.
He's not a bad guy.
Let me help you, Alex. Let me help you with the pronunciation.
Yeah, go ahead. Help.
It's Turkey Al-Rashid.
There you go. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And you know what? The thing that scares me about him is if everybody's flocking to him because of the Do-Re Mi. And then if he decides he's not into this anymore, he's going to leave boxing in shambles.
Yeah, I think that would be very disappointing. In terms of what he's doing with the Ring magazine, one of the things that I read that I'm really excited about is he's going to put all of it as a digital archive. That's going to be cool.
Well, when can you subscribe? You were supposed to be able to subscribe yesterday. I haven't seen it.
It's going to be 2 years supposedly, which
I just saw the first edition. They were showing you. I saw it.
I think when you go to the website, it just says coming soon.
What website?
If they're using the same old one, the same link, maybe they're changing the URL.
I don't know if they're going to change. I'm sure they're going to get the name, but when you go there, they just have the ratings, but I had an email or a notification that said you could start subscribing December 11th, and I can't find it anywhere, but finally,
that's yesterday. Okay.
I know. So, and finally the last major fight is the Zong against Ajit Kabiel for the WBC's interim heavyweight title. I like this fight because Zong, when I look at Zong, I say to myself, he can't beat anybody because he's so slow, but yet he catches up with people with that sledgehammer and puts them to sleep. And KBL is a fighter that just keeps defying everything. He keeps winning, so I like this fight. And this is the kind of fight that I was talking about earlier with the heavyweights that are up and coming. They should be doing what this kid is doing, fighting somebody that's, still in the mix. And Zong certainly is in the mix. It's for an interim belt. So, the winner of this fight's going to get a shot at, after they split up all the belts after this Fury-Usyk rematch. You're going to end up with 4 people running. Well, if you count interims, it might be more than that. But I like the fight. What's your thoughts?
I like it too. I think it's going to be a fun fight, and I say that fun in quotes because I'm not the one who's going to end up with a splitting headache and probably a concussion. But I think that it's definitely going to be big bombs thrown. And I think as much as I think Caballel is on his way up and he's the more talented guy, the younger, hungry guy, I think Zhang is, big, strong heavyweight, and, don't sleep on him because he could definitely do some damage if he catches Caballel. So yeah, it's definitely going to be an entertaining fight, and yeah, like you've said, I think that's a fun card from top to bottom.
And the thing about Zhang that you got to keep in mind, what is he, 41, 42?
Yeah, he's getting up there. He's getting up there in age. He's slow. I think the other thing, just in terms of the Saudi Arabia thing, it's pretty wonderful to get to enjoy all this boxing, and then when it ends, it's 7:00 at night.
I love that.
That's falling asleep in the recliner.
That's my favorite thing about it. All these other fights, I think that's hurting boxing
in the morning. It's like, who is this for?
Listen, it's hurt the sport. It's hurt the sport.
Absolutely. I think they're crazy to put these fights on so late. I don't get it.
If it wasn't for the DVR, I'd be missing all these fights because me, I'm in my feety pajamas by 7:00, but
yeah.
All right, 2025 Hall of Fame inductees. I really just want to talk about a few of them. I don't like the direction that the International Boxing Hall of Fame is going. And I know I'm gonna get hassled for this, but with the women's boxing, not that I don't think women deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, because they certainly do. I just don't think that some of the ones that are being selected should be. So I'm just going to leave that alone. I want to start off with the layup. Manny Pacquiao got in, 45 wins, 3 losses, 32 of his wins coming by knockout. His career, 8 weight divisions. In addition to his accomplishments with all the championships, his record, all these things, I think the most important thing about Manny Pacquiao is that he brought something to the sport of boxing, and that's what I feel is instrumental in being elected into any Hall of Fame. What did you do? What did you do for the sport? And Manny Pacquiao brought awareness. He brought so many fans. He was exciting to watch. It was like, I'm not saying it was like a Tyson event when Tyson was in his prime. I mean, but Manny Pacquiao, I loved watching Manny Pacquiao win, lose, or draw. I loved watching Manny Pacquiao, and I think it's a well-deserved, and first ballot was also well-deserved. What's your thoughts on Manny?
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree. And actually, I'll quote a friend of mine. You might know. I don't know if you've watched college football, but Luke Richmond, who used to play, he was a quarterback, I think, for UConn, and now he's a college referee. Sometimes he's a referees college football. But I remember him saying once, after watching a Pacquiao fight here with a bunch of my friends, he said, Manny Pacquiao brings me out of my seat. And I think that's the thing about him, is that Manny Pacquiao was always exciting. He was a true gladiator in that sense. I think in terms of his credentials as a Hall of Famer, if you look at his period at featherweight alone, Marco Antonio Barrera, Eric Morales, Juan Manuel Marquez, I think actually some of those fights might have been at 130. But 126 and 130, that Manny Pacquiao is Hall of Fame material. But that's not where it even starts. That's not where it ends. That's where it starts. Because as a lightweight, I think he might only had one fight at lightweight. Then he goes up to 140, 147, beats gigantic Frankenstein in Antonio Margarito. He stops Miguel Cotto. He was a force to be reckoned with.
He didn't just stop him and beat him, though. He beat the snot out of those guys.
Yes.
And he was so difficult to hit. I mean, he the angles. I mean, you talk to fighters that fought him, and they're just like, you don't know where the punches are coming from. I mean, he's standing in front of you. You're blocking a punch that's coming to the right. Next thing you know, you're getting blasted on the left. And he pivoted so well with his foot and his hand speed. and unbelievable power for a small guy. I mean, Manny Pacquiao, on one hand, I hated to see him, finally retire. But on the other hand, I don't think there'll ever be another Manny Pacquiao.
It's going to be, well, I think we have right now, we have Inoue, and we have Bam Rodriguez. I think that's one of the things that Manny Pacquiao, in terms of his effect on the sport, just like a guy like Prince Nassim Hamed, who brought big money and big attention, whether you liked him or hated him, to the lower weight class. Pacquiao did that too. And I think that now I don't think you can be a featherweight and become a star. I think before, guys like Hamed, Barrera, Morales, Pacquiao, that wasn't as common. I mean, you could go back, of course, there's always been great featherweights, but they didn't command the multi-million-dollar paydays that they can get now.
Well, it's crazy because even like the flyweight and super flyweight divisions are chock full of talent. And you watch those fights. I know a lot of people that don't even watch them, but let me tell you, they're the most exciting fights. And you mentioned Bam Rodriguez. I love Bam Rodriguez, but you can't mention him in the same breath of Manny in terms of
not yet.
No, never. I don't think he'll ever have.
Well, hey, let's wait. Give him time.
Manny never took those shots.
I think that at some point, I would not be surprised if we do see a Bam Rodriguez versus Inoue at some point. I think that is a possibility.
Well, they're going to keep making Inoue move up until he finally gets beat.
I hope he doesn't, because I think the bigger he gets, just like with Lomachenko, I think it becomes like he's not dealing with guys. He's having tougher times with guys he's more skilled than, because he's smaller than them.
Decide, right? No, I agree.
And I think that's going to start happening to Inoue if he keeps getting bigger. Let's talk about this Vinny guy.
Yeah, Vinny Paz gets in, okay? And let me tell you something. I think he's well deserved. I've heard a lot of conflicting opinions. Look, this follows exactly what I said. What did he bring to the sport? Vinny Pazienza was always a story in the sport. Plus, he threatened Ed Brophy. He said, "If you don't put me in, I'm going to kill you." He did say that.
Well, there you go. Maybe that's why he's in.
He said it. He said it at the Hall of Fame. He was speaking. He was doing a thing. Actually, I saw the replay of it. My friend has it. But Vinny Paz, 50 wins, 10 losses, 30 coming by knockout. The guy was always fun to watch. Throwback fighter. You don't have the heart and determination that Vinny Pazienza has anymore. You don't see it. And quite frankly, even if the fighters had it, the referees won't let it happen. So I think he's deserving of it. Signature fights, I mean, you could probably say several, but I think what the Tasmanian Devil brought to boxing, plus his story alone, I think it was deserving.
Well, I think what are those signature bouts?
Well, they're tough to talk about, right? I mean, what do you think?
Well,
it's hard to say, because when he fought the big names, he didn't come out on top. But,
right. Well, I would say his signature, to me, one of the fights that I look at was his first fight with Greg Haugen.
Haugen they hated each other.
They hated each other. I was rooting like hell for Haugen. And I think Paz went into that fight. I forget if he had all kinds of stomach problems, diarrhea or something, trying to make the fight. And, he gutted out an amazing, it was a close win. But to me, that was the night that I was like, wow, this guy's more impressive than I thought. I do think that like you said, I think part of why he got in was because of the story. And I think that's jokingly why I put Hall of Fame candidate Alex Pierpaoli on there. It was because it does feel like, it almost seems like today everybody's a Hall of Fame candidate.
Yeah, except for Marlon Starling. Why
Which
hasn't
right, which exactly you could look at Michael Nunn's record and you could look at Vinny Paz's record, because I think the other one is Lloyd Honeygate. I meant to check. Is Lloyd Honeygate? I don't think he's in the Hall of Fame.
But he beat, he
and
beat
Paz has a win over him, and I think Michael Nunn has a win over him. I could be wrong about that, but Michael Nunn, I think both Michael Nunn, I think I don't think I would have voted for him. I think the guy I would have voted, and I feel terrible that he died, the guy I would have voted for was probably Israel Vasquez.
I liked Arce too. I thought Jorge Arce.
Jorge Arce was always a lot of fun. He's definitely a blood and guts warrior, but I do think, and even Antonio Tarver, I might have voted for.
No, I wouldn't have voted for Tarver. Tarver's big claim to fame was the Roy Jones, and coaches.
Yeah, he did what people thought was impossible. I mean, one of the wins that Michael Nunn has that I think does deserve recognition is Murky Sosa. Murky Sosa was a tough fighter.
Well, coaches reminded me in the chat room, Vinny Paz beat Duran twice.
Yeah,
I know. You could say an old Duran, but let's look at Mayweather.
It's almost like Jake Paul saying, "I beat Mike Tyson."
Not quite
to the same level.
But look, Vinny Pazienza. The reason why, like, I love Boom Boom Mancini. He was one of my favorite fighters. But when you dissect him, you could be making the same arguments that people would make against Vinny Pazienza now too.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's the other guy that was, I think, on the ballot was Pong Saklak Wangjung Kam. He was another long time.
Well, he should get in.
Who I think he could have been in too. So I think that's, to me, and that's why I'm joking with the Hall of Fame candidate, is that to me, this it did make me worry about who's voting for these guys now, because to think Michael Nunn and Vinny Paz are deserved. I mean, Michael Nunn, yes. I mean, because he's got the win over Iran Barkley. He knocked Stumbu Kalambe out cold.
Listen, the thing is you have to look at what they bring to the sport. And when Michael Nunn, when he fought, he was controlling listen, if he didn't get messed, if he didn't, go to college for 15 years.
I think that's the thing with both these guys. To me, it was almost like the people voting for them gave them an extra push because of outside the ring stuff. Michael Nunn suffered from our justice system and these mandatory minimums. I mean, it sounded like it was just a crazy drug bust where he bought a kilogram of coke for $200. I mean, it seems like just such a setup.
Well, he sold it to undercover people.
Right. Well, no, he was buying it, I think. And I think that was the thing, is that
he would have just got possession, not dealership,
But he, and then they had a lot of people that were witnesses that supposedly were all people that were incarcerated that maybe were getting benefits of, to rat him out, to get their sentences shortened. So he got, 16 years. That's a long time. Right. And his sentence was 23. And I think the other thing with Vinny Paz, he gets massive credit, and he certainly deserves it as a human being for coming back from the horrific injury that he did come back from. But I think that those are two things that doesn't get you in the Hall of Fame.
Alex, there was a guy.
Like you said, it is Hall of Fame. It's not Hall of Skill.
But it should be a nice balance. But Coach had forwarded me an opinionated article from one of the guys. You want to know who's voting for fighters, right? One of the guys who's on the panel, and he was saying who he voted for, blah, blah, blah. The guy hasn't even been right. He started covering boxing in 2015. He hasn't even been a fan for 10 years.
Yeah.
He hasn't even been covering the sport for 10 years. And he's being one of the guys that are deciding who goes into the Hall of Fame. Don't you think the problem starts right there?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, another guy that is on the ballot and has been on there for a long time that I think I would vote for is Rocky Lockridge. Rocky Lockridge lost a razor thin decision, and it was it wasn't. It was a lopsided decision, but it was a fight that I think he won over
Edwards.
Bazooka Gomez. Yeah, was it
Edwards? Right?
Yeah, but he lost in Puerto Rico, and that was if he had won that fight, he'd be in the Hall of Fame.
But but that era, think of that era.
80s.
Rockridge. No, I know. There was so many talented fighters. Marlon Starling's one of them. Donald Curry. You mentioned Lloyd Hunnigan. Donald Curry. Did he ever finally get in? I don't think
Donald Curry did. Yeah,
he finally did. Like it must have been last year or the year before, because Donald Curry was with the Cobra. I mean, he was extremely exciting until he met Lord Hunnigan, and then that was the end of him.
Wilfredo Bazooka Gomez. I was right. Yeah, it's Bazooka Gomez.
I thought it was Edwards.
If Rocky Law, because I think he fought Boza Edwards.
Oh, you're right. It's Boza Edwards.
He has wins over him.
Yeah.
But I think he did. Maybe he didn't.
Well, listen, I'm running out of time. The last person I want to give credit to here is, of course, my colleague, my friend, Randy Gordon.
Yes.
And that was I got to be honest, and no knock on Randy. I was a little surprised at that. I'm happy. I think he deserves it, but I didn't even think that. I don't get privy. I'm not privy to who's on the ballot. But I was surprised, but I was happily surprised. He's been around a long time. He's a real boxing guy, and I believe he deserved it. I'm happy for him, and I think sometimes the International Boxing Hall of Fame gets it right, and they certainly got it right with Randy.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. And he's somebody that he was there when I first got into the sport in the 80s in 1985. He was somebody that I couldn't wait to hear as a broadcaster. I couldn't wait to read him as a writer. Then he was the head of the New York State Athletic Commissioner. And I think that he helped the sport in that sense. The thing I'll always remember, and I think that this is something the sport should adopt because it makes so much sense, was Randy's reach.
Yes.
Because he would measure the jabbing arm from the shoulder to the knuckles, which makes so much more sense rather than measuring wingspan, which doesn't make sense. Nobody hits a guy like this. You hit a guy like that. So why not measure that? It was one of those inventions of the sport that, in a sport that's been as old as the first Olympics, to be able to see that and think of that, it shows what a visionary he is. He's also just a really kind man who you can disagree with without that's it, we're never speaking again, that kind of a thing.
He's not Italian.
And he likes lollipops.
Only Italians do that.
And he likes lollipops. Yeah, I guess there's a lot of that in my family.
There's a lot of it in mine.
To me.
I just stumbled across one I would have never thought happened, and everyone's like, no, they don't talk. I was like, oh, geez. But in any event, Randy's a boxing guy, and I think boxing guys that aren't boxers should be the ones that are in the Hall of Fame. And I said on last week's show that boxing needs to be run by boxing people. It's the only sport that a non-boxing person could be in a very important role to make decisions for the sport. No other sport is like that. You're not going to get a soccer star that's gonna make decisions for Major League Baseball. It's just not going to happen. But anyway,
I'll tell you, in terms of the non-combatants, the past 2 years, I think the Hall of Fame did a great job, because between Randy Gordon getting in and the last year, Wally Matthews getting in, those are two guys that as a fan and somebody who has just been in love with this sport since I was 15 years old, to see those two guys I looked up to and read their stuff when I was a kid, to see them getting recognized, that's just a great feeling. And it just, as much as people, think of this as the red light district of sports, and I think they should, It definitely has that qualities. I think that it's great to see, good people, knowledgeable people get their just desserts. And so I'm very psyched, and I'm looking forward to congratulating him in person when I get up there in June.
I have a feeling I'm going to be returning there this year too. I haven't gone in the last.
How could you not to see the Pac-Man? Come on, waka 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 waka.
Well, you better when you get your room, get an extra one.
All right.
Get it out, or I'm just going to go up and go home. But anyway, listen. Just programming note: we are not doing another show until after the first of the year, and we'll keep you posted. Just check out BillyCBoxing.com. Alex, I wish you and yours a real happy and merry holiday season, as well as everyone else out there watching and listening. I hope you and yours have a great holiday season.
Absolutely. Happy holidays and a very happy 2025.
I'm hoping for good things. I think we're heading in the right direction. So, Alex, be good to everybody else. Make sure you tune in. I don't know when. I think it's going to be the first Thursday after the new year. So make sure you.
What should we say? Merry Christmas to all, and to all some great fights.
Yeah, and right. You know what? I should have played that. I should have played my my Christmas card. That was that.
Oh yeah, that was great. That was the night.
Let's see if I even have it over here. Maybe I do. I don't. But yeah, I forgot about those. Those were good. That first one was the best. But anyway, all right, people. We'll see you next year.
Ciao, baby.